The 1862 gold strike is what started bringing people to this community. Within 2 years of the discovery, there were over 5,000 people living in this area. So people came in large influxes to mine here. This building here was built in the time of the gold rush. The military constructed this building between 1865 and 1870. The building originally was just a stone single-story flat roof building. The second story and the part over here are two additions that Lung On and Ing He had done to this building. We have no idea when that bullet was shot through the building. It could have been any time the military was here or the Chinese. And you can see it on the other side. So the military wanted a stone building that was really fortified. People couldn't burn it down, couldn't break into it. So when the military left this building, it was the perfect building for the Chinese to take over due to the security and safety of it.
Do you have a kind of record of what some of these medicines would have done, or like what they would have?
Yes. In the interpretive center, there's a free bookmark near where you signed in. And it's from the Oregon College of Oriental Medicine. They went through every single box we have here in all of the packages and tried to identify all of the herbs. Some of them they couldn't identify, but we have over 500 herbs there identified. We also have his prescriptions that he had written out, and they put those on there as well.
Is there anything very rare or endangered, or?
There is, a hawkbill turtle, which is actually very endangered today, is one of the things we have in our apothecary. We have opium husks, which the Oregon College of Oriental Medicine classified it as an obsolete substance. The bear paws are something that we're trying to figure out whether those are from China or the United States. Fossilized dinosaur bones. That's one of the rare things in there as well.
That's pretty interesting. I remember hearing that they used fossilized dinosaur bones.
Yep. When the military left this building, it came into the hands of a local, and our local leased it to the first Chinaman in 1871. So 1871 is when it became known as Chung and Company. That's the original sign from 1871. It's supposed to mean Golden Chinese Outpost because it was opened as an outpost for the Chinese community. This was downtown Main Street, Chinatown. At the end of Main Street, we would have had a temple for the community. There would have been houses all along here. They had their own garden. Everything they needed to be a self-sufficient community, they would have had here. People started forming this Chinatown because nobody wanted to live on this side of town. Being that Canyon Creek runs this way and the John Day River runs that way, it was a floodplain. So this is why it was prime real estate for the Chinese.
Interestingly enough, the Grant County Fairgrounds, which were established in 1909, were the site of the original Chinatown here in John Day, but it burned down sometime in the 1880s. There was never an investigation, and all of the Chinese were told that they need to pick up and leave, and they basically left for an area about quarter mile, half a mile over to the west on the floodplain at the intersection of the two rivers, but you would have had hundreds of Chinese families living in this open area. And it makes me wonder, obviously highly illegal, and I'd never do it, but, you know, what would you find with a metal detector out here?
This community had its last large influx in the 1880s. 1885, the Canyon City Chinatown was destroyed by a fire. There was no formal investigation into what caused this fire, and the city officials told all of the Chinese living there they had to leave and relocate. So 1885, 100 or so Chinese joined this, and that was our last boom in this community, and that was when we had around 1,000 Chinese living here.
What's this poster here?
Those are the people from the Nationalist Army in China. They were against the communist regime taking over. So these are all people that would be highly revered and respected. Lung On and Ing He sent money back to these people to help fight against the communist regime taking over. So that's why this is hanging there.
I wonder, because the Chinese Minister of Tourism came over, and I kind of wonder what the attitude was towards that. I guess they probably just would consider it history.
Yes. Yeah, when we have people from China, that's something they're really interested in. And one thing about that is Chiang Kai-shek was actually respected by both sides, so that's something that plays into it as well.
Oh, and he was actually with Mao for a while.
Yes, yes. Long On and Ing He, the two men that made this building what it is, didn't know each other until they met here in Chinatown around 1887. Long On and Ing He were two very different men. Long On, he's the one that becomes more westernized of the two. He's an entrepreneur. He was fluent in English in China, he could read and write, was well off financially, so he's one of the classes allowed into the United States legally. He has no problem entering through San Francisco in 1886, looking around, hearing about this community, and makes his way up here. We have Long On, who was our entrepreneur, capitalist. One of his main businesses is selling liquor. He had customers ordering entire gallons of whiskey. So during the Prohibition, he wasn't going to lose that business. So he had who knows how many bottles of bourbon whiskey smuggled through Canada here. When the city rediscovered this building, they found 98 bottles of his whiskey that he had hidden. There's a trap door in this back room. You can see the handle and the boards in the doorway. So any hiding hole Long On could find for his bottles of bourbon, he hid them. And of the 98 that the city found in the late 60s, we have 33 of them left today. Each of them about $10,000 a piece. Ing He, who was our doctor, he's a traditional herbologist and pulsologist, so he was one of the working classes not allowed into the United States legally. So he actually had uncles that had come to the United States prior to the Exclusion Acts that helped kind of get him in the back door. So Ing He came in as an illegal immigrant, worked as a laborer with his father in Washington for a year or two, and eventually heard of this Chinatown here, which is one of the third largest in the United States at this point, and has no Chinese doctor. So that's how Ing He made his way down here. The city rediscovered this building. They found $23,000 worth of uncashed checks in that black chest under Ing He's bed. A majority of those are from the Great Depression. He had a repertoire with patients. He knew who could afford things and who couldn't. He would accept their checks but wouldn't actually cash their payments if he knew they couldn't afford it. So that's why we had $23,000 worth of uncashed checks.
He seems like a really good guy.
He was a very genuine man, and he meets up with Long On, and they decide to be lifetime partners based on the balances they have with each other. They take it over in 1888. And Long On passes away first in 1940, and Ing He is our last one living here in 1948. Inside the building is kind of like a time capsule from 1948. When Ing He left, he was planning on coming back in no time, so he left the building as he was living in it. He unfortunately passed away a few years later, living in Portland in 1952 is when he passes away. His nephew Bob Waugh then deeds this building to the city of John Day under the one stipulation they had to open it as a museum. The city said, sure, and then they didn't touch this building for almost 20 years. So there were 20 years this building was neglected. People in the local community broke in, stole stuff, took things, but this building was stacked floor to ceiling, wall to wall with stuff. So even though things have ended up missing over the years, we still have an immense amount of stuff in our collection. Short time frame after Long On died, before Bob Waugh came to live with Ing He was an old man that was almost completely blind. And the local story goes, some kids tried to break into here because they knew about all the fireworks and candy and other good things. They took a couple steps in the doorway, and then they heard the meat cleaver whooshing by their head and thudding into the wall. So meat cleaver right on Ing He's bedside table, so if he ever needed to defend himself, it's there.
Oh, it's still there.
Yep, yeah, every single room would have had a meat cleaver in it for defense purposes because they couldn't own firearms. Two of them are on display in the interpretive center, and those would have been pulled from our back storage room and Long On's bedroom. 1917 is written on the paper wrapping by hand because that's when they had them. There's two of them unwrapped in the interpretive center so you can see them, and all of them have evaporated a little bit. that was locked when the city found it and they couldn't figure out how to open it. So they just blowtorched the bottom of the safe off to get whatever was in there out. And whatever the city found in this safe, they left no records of. So we will never know what was found in the safe. All we know is they blowtorched the bottom off and then spot welded the bottom back on. One of the items we don't have in our archives is the original deed of this building. So we could think it could have been in the case, but we'll never know. Cool. By the 1920s, there was only about 10 Chinese living here, so this went from a community of 1,000 Chinese to about 10. At that point, all of the wooden buildings in the community were dilapidated, falling apart. So Long An and Ing Hei made the collective decision, move the main shrine from the temple into this building. So then that building could be torn down, that wood could be used for something else, and any Chinese left here in this community can just come worship here. That one is a saying about how friends are like clouds, they're always with you. I call them the live, laugh, love signs of the day because they're genuinely just inspirational, positive phrases. Long An had really beautiful calligraphy, so people would actually pay him to make them and hang them in their homes as decoration. So these are ones that he would have made to decorate this building.